This PowerPoint is just to show you some different techniques that you may need to use for your formal research proposal. There'll be many times in your career where you may have to write some sort of a proposal, whether it's an informal type of proposal, a memo for something small, or you may have to do a major formal research proposal, much like the one we're doing in class. For this proposal, you're trying to persuade your audience to go along with your proposal, that your idea is the best idea or the best solution for the project. So understanding the different dynamics of that can be very beneficial. Please be aware that the images and examples provided are just examples. Yours does not have to look this way. The text on the page is not as relevant as the presentation of what your proposal should look like, the type of information it should have, etc. The first page of your proposal will be the title page. The example on the right shows you what one student included. You'll see the title of the project. You would need to include your name and the date. You can include a graphic element if you desire. However, some proposals require a very clean, low graphic type of presentation, in which case you may not include one. However, for this project, if you elect to include a graphic image on your title page, you are more than welcome to. The next page will be the cover letter. You'll see the example on the right. It should be properly formatted in letter format. You want to make sure that you are directing your letter to a specific person, a specific reader. That way your proposal is read by the primary audience that you want to have read it. In the body of the letter, you want to focus the reader's attention on very specific aspects of the proposal you find significant, perhaps something that's especially beneficial or a certain effect that your audience may really appreciate from your proposal idea. You typically want to also include a very specific response date in the conclusion, so that way you and your reader have a very specific due date on which you both agree. If you pardon the pun, you're both on the same page with regards to when you expect to have a response. The next page is the table of contents. An example of a table of contents you can see on your right. You'll see it lists both major and minor divisions, and you want to include those elements and their corresponding page numbers. You'll see at the bottom they listed figures and tables. You want to include any lists of illustrations or charts and the like on this page as well. All the pages of your proposal, except your title page, should have page numbers, so you can have page numbers correspond for all the elements of your proposal on this page. The next element is the abstract. The abstract, similar to the cover letter, will highlight the major points addressed in your proposal. It should include a brief description of the current problem. It should point out major elements of the proposed idea. The abstract should be on its own page, and it can be anywhere from 150 to 350 words long. That's usually a pretty good sized paragraph. Yours may be a little bit longer. There's many different examples of ways to compose abstracts, and so you have a lot of different opportunities, different types of ways you can present the abstract. You want to use the method that works best for you and your proposal project. Then you will have an introduction. The introduction section should identify your overall purpose for the proposal, and then it should indicate what some of the major issues or problems are that need to be addressed. Why are you writing this proposal? What problem or problems is your solution in this proposal supposed to solve? You may have some research in this section if you've done research on some of the problems that can arise as a result of the issue you're addressing. But this section should not be longer than your discussion where you actually focus on the proposed solution. That's the whole point of your proposal. You're trying to persuade your reader to go along with your solution. So the focus of your proposal should be on the solution, not on the problems themselves. The next section is the discussion, or the body of your proposal. This section should indicate your proposed solution to the problem. It should be well developed. It should be really the largest part of your proposal, since this is what you want to convince your audience to do. Much of your research should be included in this section, and why that research is important and what does it mean for your proposal. Your textbook offers a lot of different recommendations for what should be included in this section. Perhaps the people who will be working on the project, perhaps different divisions or aspects of the proposed solution that are important, perhaps elements of cost. Those are all elements that you may want to include in the discussion or body of your proposal. Other discussion elements include some graphic elements. You may have a visual example of something, a chart, a table, a graph. You'll see in the example on the right, the student included a pictorial representation of kind of a layout for an office space. Additionally, you can also use bulleted lists in the course of your proposal to help break up long paragraphs. If you have sections, maybe a small list, but you want to explain each different part of the list, you can make that a bulleted element instead of having a very long paragraph that highlights those points. You also then need to have a conclusion. Now your conclusion may be two parts. You may have a recommendation section, then a conclusion, or your recommendations may be listed in your conclusion, whichever format works better for you. If you have a lot of recommendations for your course of action, then you might want to have a separate recommendation section. However, in the example you'll see here, they have put both the recommended course of action and the conclusion information just together. You may also include a schedule or timeline of completion. This may be a graphic element similar to what we did in the progress report. You may include that in this section as well. You also want to be sure to include any specific required due dates as necessary. Again, you want to make sure you, and in the case of the proposal, any of your readers understand any certain time constraints that may be relevant. An optional set of elements that you may have include the glossary or an appendix. A glossary and appendix is additional information that your reader might find useful as they're reading your proposal. A glossary is a page in your proposal that includes maybe industry-specific language or lists of acronyms and what those acronyms mean to provide clarity to your audience. This may be helpful if there's a lot of industry language in your proposal and your audience might be a more lay audience, someone that's not familiar with that industry-specific language. You can include that language on the glossary. Similarly, if you have additional charts or pieces of information or graphic elements that may be important but not directly relevant, or it expands on additional information your reader may want to know, but it's not necessary for the proposal itself, you may have that in an appendix. Any extra general information can be included in an appendix page. The glossary or an appendix would get its own separate page in your proposal. And finally, we have the references page. For all the sources you reference in your proposal, you should have a full APA formatted citation on the references or works cited page. You can see the example on the right here in the APA formatted references page this student had. This also includes any charts or graphs that you pulled from a source or a chart or a graph that you developed from source material. That also needs to have a citation in the works cited page. So hopefully this PowerPoint clarifies a lot of that text from the assignment for your formal research proposal. It is a lot of information, and reading it in that block text, even with my bullets and trying to use some graphic elements to break it up, it still is a lot of information. If you still have any questions, any remaining questions or concerns about your final research proposal, please feel free to call, text, or email me.